So, welcome today to a series of conversations with practitioners about trauma-informed work. My name is Aneta Idczak, and I run Trauma Resilience Embodied Yoga and Social Impact online mentorship for yoga teachers, where I take a group of teachers through a 10-week journey through learning about trauma, about resilience, about embodiment, trauma-aware and trauma-informed work, and mentoring them to bring into their own work, into their own communities, this kind of work. And so in this series, I'm going to be talking, just having a very easy conversation with those practitioners about the work, who they work with, who their communities are, and how this work of trauma-informed approach, resilience work and embodiment, how it impacts the way or impacted the way that they work with their clients within their own communities. So today I have got a practitioner called Isabelle Griffith. So welcome, Isabelle.
Thank you, Aneta. It's great to be here.
Thank you for joining me for this conversation. I really appreciate that. And so Isabelle, so you're qualified as the first cohort of the training. So congratulations, well done.
Thank you.
And I wanted to ask about the work that you do with the communities that you do, the clients and the students that you work with. So tell us a little bit about you, who you are, and the kind of work that you do.
So I'm an emotional well-being and resilience coach, and really, as well as being a yoga teacher and a mindfulness teacher, and really the people I work with most often are professional women who experience what I call high-functioning anxiety or stress. So on the surface, you think that they have it all together, their life is under control. Often they have high-flying career, and it looks like they're really together. But underneath that surface, what you realize is that they suffer from a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, that they tend to be high achievers. So they've been doing and pushing for many years. And they've never really taken the time to stop, and it's starting to catch up with them. So they might start to suffer within their body, their shoulders, their back, lack of sleep, sometimes chronic illnesses as well. And they just get to the point where they realize that they've got to stop, that something has to change, that they have to adopt a different way of being. So those are the women that I work with, and I know them very well because I've been working with them for a few years, but also that used to be me. And in fact, yoga and mindfulness and all the tools that I use now were so instrumental in my, let's call it, recovery from all of that doing. So these are the people that I work with, and this is what I do, really focusing on emotional resilience and sort of well-being.
Okay, great. So yes, I can hear it really clearly, this kind of high flyer, high stress, long-term, the chronic, illness or chronic conditions. It's all there, isn't it? And when you think about trauma and the impact of trauma, our understanding of trauma has changed over the last 20 years. And definitely we used to think about trauma that, happens when somebody has got an accident, a really difficult accident, or they've been attacked or they've been abused in some kind of way. But really understanding that trauma can happen, and one of the in different ways. And one of the really great definitions that I heard of trauma is trauma happens, when there is too little or too much for too long. And really being aware of the trauma impact and trauma symptoms, and actually knowing also that a lot of that stuff comes from attachment-based trauma and the childhood trauma, and that it can be triggered through the high levels of stress in an adult life, really changes our understanding of how we can work with people.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Can I pick up on that?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I think that was, I mean, that's a huge part of what led me to the course. And I was really interested in it because it covered two aspects that I felt were really important for my clients. The first one is the trauma-informed piece, and the second one was the embodiment. And to start with the first one, you know, I realized working with these women and teaching them in my yoga classes that my understanding of trauma was really a misunderstanding. I always thought of it as being that, you know, huge trauma with a big T. And as a result of that, as practitioners, we often don't identify that people in our classes or in our client base have experienced trauma, and they don't identify as having experienced trauma either. Because, and that definition you just gave was so helpful on the course, too much or too little for too long. I think that's what led me to the course, is just the realization that most people I encounter have in some way, shape or form experienced trauma. And I really felt ill-equipped to deal with it because I didn't understand how to be holding that space safely and really taking them on that journey. So that's, I think, a really important point is trauma is really misunderstood, and most of us at some point in some ways have experienced trauma in our life, as you take it as that definition of too much or too little for too long, often going back to our childhood. So I think that's hugely important, because whilst we may not identify as someone who's experienced trauma and seek that kind of help, we will come to a yoga class, we will come to a coach, and that's when it might start to unravel. And, you know, being the coach in this situation, you need to be able to notice, and to be able to support and hold that safe space for them. So I think that's really important. And the other piece too around the course, which was very appealing to me, is the embodiment, because a lot of the women that I work with are really caught up in their mind. They're very bright, they're very intellectual, and they've thought that they were through life in some ways. And so they've lost touch with their body. They, you know, some of them, I mean, a woman recently told me she went on holiday and she reconnected with her body just by putting cream suntan lotion on her skin, and to really realize, oh yeah, which is amazing, but that's the society that we live in. So the embodiment for me was really important, to be able to help them to come down into the body and experience life differently. And of course, the two of them go together really beautifully. So I think that's important, that definition of trauma and how it impacts what we do.
Yes, great. I really love that. And I completely agree. Our society is focused on the Cartesian thinking. So I think, therefore I am. So much is focused on that, on the mind and the workings of the mind, and being clear thinkers, and you know, doing things through our mind. And especially if you live that very busy life, if you focusing on the solution focus approach, if you working towards deadlines, towards goals, the body, you know, the body is much slower, and the body has certain needs, and often we sacrifice the needs of the body in order to be able to achieve you know, our deadlines and our goals in such fast-paced lives. And what I really love about talking with you and the you know, the community and clients that you work with, is that we often think exactly what you said, that trauma-informed staff, that there is trauma just within the certain clients groups. So my background is in social care, and I work with trauma and crisis and dual diagnosis, so mental health and addictions and domestic violence and child protection. And so this is mostly, most people understanding around trauma, that these are those groups of people that have experienced trauma and that need support. But actually anybody, as you said, somebody might come into your group, into your class, or sign up to work with you one-to-one, and then start connecting within their body, and everything starts unraveling. And, you know, a lot of yoga teachers say, well, my client was crying at the end of the session. You know, my client was saying that they, you know, their anxiety has increased, or they're struggling with breathing, or they're lying on the ground in the relaxation, they're fidgeting, they can't close their eyes. You know, all of those, if we can pick up on those symptoms and those signs of somebody really struggling internally, that can really be helpful. And having those skills, practical skills, not just understanding from the mind level, oh, I know what trauma-informed approach is, but actually having practical skills, practical tools to support your clients is key to actually being able to provide that safe space for them, that safe support.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you know, it's interesting you said that, because my journey has been, like I said, I was in the corporate world for 20 years, and then I became, you know, I had a long love story with yoga, decided to become a yoga teacher, and I always offered a very mindful type of yoga with meditation at the end. And it's, you know, frequently people would cry, and people would, you know, express emotions, and they would come and speak to me at the end of the class and talk about their life and what was going on for them. And I felt completely unequipped to cope and to help them. You know, I could see that this is, you know, this is people's mental health, emotional well-being. You have to treat that with so much care. That's what then led me to study mindfulness, and then to become a coach. And then, you know, the more, it kind of went in circles for me. I started here, but the more you expand your knowledge, the more you realize how important it is to be trauma-informed, because you'll encounter it every day. And, you know, it doesn't mean that you become a trauma specialist, or that you work with populations, as you say, with really deep trauma. It just means, for me, it means being able to take my clients to a deeper level more safely, so that we can just have those conversations without me feeling that I'm not in integrity with what I offer, and for them feeling safe. And again, when we, you know, through the training, one of the things that you really imparted on us is the importance of creating that sense of trust and safety with those clients, because they're fundamentally lacking it within themselves. So, you know, they need to feel, and therefore we need to feel and embody that sense of safety and trust. So yeah, I absolutely agree. Yeah, it just it isn't just populations with trauma, it's pretty much everyone.
Yeah. I completely agree with that. And something that you just said here, and it's one of the things that was so important during the course when I was designing the course. And that's why the mentoring part is such a big part of the course. And, you know, we have one-to-one sessions to support you in kind of integrating the learning for yourself. So that part was about understanding the role that you play as a practitioner, as a teacher, as somebody who's holding the space for another person, and how much your own self-care, your own inner feeling of safety and stability plays in that relationship and in your ability to hold that safe space for somebody else. So I wonder if you could say a little bit about that, the impact of how it impacted, how the course impacted how you relate to your own self-care as a teacher.
I think it's an important point, because as I was reflecting on the course earlier, it's really twofold. It's the, you know, it's the learning about trauma-informed work and how to help our clients become more embodied and benefiting from these tools. And it's also our own journey of becoming embodied leaders. And I love the thread of that conversation that really helped me to think differently about the role that I want to play, not just with my clients, but more broadly in my community and in society generally. You know, I think, and through, because you buddy us up as well, and through the conversations, I've had such rich conversations with my buddies on the course around that whatever we do, you know, as yoga teachers, we lead people through a class, and every class is a transformation. Clients, students come feeling a certain way and they leave feeling a certain way. And I'm not suggesting that what we do as teachers is push them into that transformation, but it happens organically. So we play a role as leader, as yoga teachers. We play a role as leader in our families, in our, you know, in our community units. And that's, I think, a really important part of what you encourage us to do throughout the course. And to be able to play that role as a leader, we need to be, you know, we need to be, I don't like that expression, but that's what comes to mind, eating our own dog food, as in, you know, if you're going to help your clients become more embodied, which is really important to me, you've got to be embodied yourself. And you need to reflect on, you know, what's important to you. What type of leader do you want to be? How do you want to support your community? What role do you want to play? And therefore, how can you cultivate that in your everyday life through your own practices? And, you know, you're certainly not prescriptive throughout the course. You know, it's really whatever practices are supportive. Obviously, embodiment practices are encouraged because that's what we're here for. But it's also just simply asking ourselves, well, how am I feeling and what do I need? And you made a point earlier of we don't connect with our bodies, and our emotions, our bodies are sometimes even seen as getting in the way. Oh, I'm hungry, that means I'm going to have to stop working and going to get something to eat. I mean, even going to the toilet sometimes, you know, how many of us have sat at our desk and going, oh, I'm just going to go, but I'm going to finish. And those are the little things that you've got to start noticing and to say, well, how am I feeling and what do I need? And if I need to eat because I'm hungry, can I honor that need and support myself in that way? So it goes from those simple things to and I like the conversation we had around compassionate boundaries, because, you know, we all, I suppose most of the teachers you work with, we have our own journey, we have our own stories, and often we are led by the heart in this helping profession. And it's easy to confuse being of service with giving yourself completely away and having no boundaries. And I can raise my hand and say I had that confusion, you know. Is it an integrity to even charge for my services? Is it, you know, all these things? And is it okay to work with clients at times that really don't work for me and that start to take away time with my own family? And so I think that piece around compassionate boundary is really important. So it plays across every, you know, across every area of your life. And it's like everything. You can do the formal practices of I'm going to be doing an embodied body scan, but then it's bringing it to life in your moment to moment life, you know. As you said again, which really resonated with me, the way you do anything is the way you do everything. And that says it all, you know, that really says it all. Because how you choosing to drink your cup of tea in the morning, how you choosing to wake up, how you choosing to interact with people is how you're going to be supporting your clients. It's just really reminding ourselves constantly of who am I choosing to be and what does that mean then in the way that I'm embodying myself now. And that means that, you know, we had that conversation before. Clients come to me, and I've been that person too, and I still am sometimes, and say almost fix me, you know, just do, I don't care what you do, but just fix me so that I go from being stressed and anxious to being calm and grounded and gliding through life beautifully. And it's difficult to explain that that's not going to happen, because it's a way of life to me. You know, it really is. And it's a moment to moment choice that you make of how am I, you know, how am I choosing to be in this moment? And it doesn't mean that, again, that we really constantly pushing ourselves to be different. It's just, in fact, the opposite of just grounding with ourselves and just finding that stillness and that inner resilience almost. So, but I think it's important to say that's just, you know, you learn the tools, you learn the resources, you learn the coping strategies, and then you can develop the self-trust and resilience from there, knowing that life is going to be like this. And that rather than going up and down like this with it, you can just weather it a bit more gracefully, with more ease. So yeah, I think it touches on all of these things. And I like the fact that it's the journey of learning how to support your clients, but also the journey of how can you become a more embodied leader, which is a lifelong journey, you know, I think. It doesn't stop.
Yeah, I love it what you just said. It's so much there. It's really great. I mean, when you are training as a yoga teacher, you cover ethics, you cover, you know, how to work with clients, but the compassionate boundaries is something that you learn and that you strengthen, just like the resilience can be learned, just like the tools for self-regulations can be learned. Over a period of time. It doesn't happen with a one swoosh technique that changes how you feel. It's a process. Mm-hmm. It's a process of a period of time, and it's baby steps. And every single day, you know, when you practice a little bit, it widens your ability and your resilience to cope with whatever life is presenting for you.
Yeah.
And becoming, and I loved it what you just said about becoming embodied leader. For me, this is, you know, it was such an important part of the course to really, you know, understand that you, as a yoga teacher, as a practitioner, you are seen as a leader. You are seen as somebody who talks about wellness and well-being and living in alignment with yourself and healing, and, you know, understanding that it's about walking your talk. And who do you need to become? What qualities you need to cultivate or embody in order to be able to do that? And that means, you know, that fundamental question: how do you take care of yourself that you don't burn out? That you don't sacrifice, as you said, your family life, that you don't struggle continuously with not having enough money to pay your bills because you believe that you need to do it in a certain kind of way. You know, when I mentor a lot of yoga teachers, and when I hear yoga teachers say, I don't have time for my own practice, that's the alarm bell for me. It's like something is completely out of balance here, because actually your practice and your time to you know, practice self-regulation and being grounded, being fully present, connected, that's the space that you can hold, that you hold the safe space for somebody else. If you are just running around, if you're anxious, if you burn out, if you stretch out beyond your ability to cope, you're not in a space to hold that safe space for somebody else.
Yeah, that's really important. And what it brings up for me, I mean, so many things I could pick up on, but I think one thing that's, again, that's been an important realization for me is, as we encourage our clients to treat themselves with compassion, we need to do that with ourselves too. And right. You know, there are times where it will get really busy, and it does. And I think, to what you were saying, you need to be having your own practice to be able to support others in having theirs, if you want to be in integrity with what you teach. But sometimes when things fall through the cracks and you lose your way a little bit, then I think it's also really important that we don't judge ourselves too harshly as teachers. And you know, because there's a pressure with being a role model or a leader or someone that people look up to in some ways, and we're also human. And so I think that compassion for ourselves, as much as we give it to others, is really important. And to me, it's part of that self-care piece you were talking about too, just treating ourselves with compassion.
Yeah, I completely agree. And actually, that's the difference between, you know, being perfect and this is where things start going wrong. Yeah. This is what you normally see with gurus and stuff. It's like, I am so enlightened that you know, I don't do anything wrong, and then it turns out that actually there is a lot of issues behind the scenes. So I think the more it's about that piece about living in line with your values and living in integrity and acting from integrity, and also really having ways of taking care of yourself within all of that, and you know, understanding that part of human condition is to make mistakes, is to you know, not know all the answers, is to fall out with people, is to, you know, but really the important bit in here is how do you take care of yourself within all of this? How do you take care of your clients and your students in that time? And there's a lot of learning there for all of us, and I don't think none of us have got all the answers. And I think that's where the coming in a community and being together and learning together is such a valuable and essential thing.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, it through the course, as you talk about the community, what I think I've really benefited from too is that community, like I said, the buddy system, and you know, talking to a different person each week and really having such rich exchanges. And even in the sessions themselves, we all came from such different backgrounds with such different perspectives and different modalities that we'd studied, and some newer teachers, some older teachers, some people with all sorts of qualifications, and each of us brought into the discussion something unique and interesting, and I find that really enriching. I always find that just being in the company of people who are interested in this subject is empowering and just so exciting. It renews your, you know, your light and your excitement for what you do. So that's also a really important part of the course, I think, the community you create.
Brilliant, brilliant. I completely agree with that. So thank you so much, Isabelle. It's been a pleasure chatting with you, and thank you for sharing your experiences, and thank you for sharing, you know, how the training impacted your work and the kind of communities that you work with and the learnings that you had. Thank you so much for that, for taking time to do that. And I'm sure we will get more chances to talk and discuss those very important issues.
Well, I hope so. Thank you. It's always such a pleasure talking to you, so rich and interesting. Thank you, Aneta, and thank you for just an amazing training. Really, really valuable. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Isabelle. And thank you everyone for taking time to listen to us. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have got any feedback, any comments, I'm always really interested in continuing that dialogue and having those conversations around how we can bring trauma-informed work into our communities and our work with clients and students. So take care, and I will be seeing you in some other interviews, hopefully. Take care.